So I have an idea of how this is going to go, but I'll just kick it off, and you guys did your homework, or at least thought about the subjects.
Oh man, I forgot. Fuck.
Pass me your gun, Scotto.
Dude,
I know
I'm
it's
sure
on
that
you.
these questions are going to be really hard too. Things I've never thought of.
Welcome to the Social Thorns podcast for having comfortable conversations about uncomfortable topics.
In uncomfortable ways.
In potentially uncomfortable ways.
No, sorry.
And sitting in uncomfortable positions.
Social Thorns
Social Thorns
is our name, and this is episode 3.
Okay, so I want to
Maximum
continue.
awkwardness, please.
I want to continue the conversation from last time because I feel like we didn't finish it. And the whole overall topic was, who were you during COVID? And this is a reflective question on looking back on what positions you took. And the context is that currently everything that you do is political in this day and age. And that is because we are on lockdown and you are either complying or defying the orders. There's kind of like no gray. You can't like not participate in this, right? Everything's also becoming recorded. Everyone's pulling out their phones when there's an altercation, and there's a surveillance system. We have a surveillance state, but it's not the government necessarily that's surveying us. It's ourselves. We are literally policing ourselves through social media.
Our fellow citizens.
And then what's weird is that you have people policing each other in laws that each individual defines, right? Right? You could offend someone,
Yeah.
and then you pull out your phone and be like, look, this person, they're offending me.
The perspectives can be biased so easily.
So to reflect on who were you during COVID, maybe both of you can walk me through a timeline since COVID hit. Where were you trending the line of complying with all of the orders or defying some of the orders? And then I'll get into some of the other kind of more reflective questions. But I want to know, since March, how have you complied and defied, and has that evolved to today, which is June 28th?
Well, let's be clear. Since March, some of the rules were, bars are closing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm complying by not going to a closed bar and trying to force my way in.
That is a ridiculous way of complying.
But
I never even thought of that.
there are
It's like
the
a good
rules that were released in California aren't necessarily the same that were released, say, in Texas or Florida or New York.
Mm-hmm.
So social gatherings, it was recommended that no party larger than 6 gathered together in California.
Did you do that?
At first, yes. Did it break down, and did we start to congregate in parties larger than 6? Yes. Did we maintain social distance in those parties? Yeah. Our group typically is the type of group that hugs each other, high fives, fist bumps, those types of things upon seeing each other. Those activities have ceased. Now you have these air hugs from 10-foot distance. COVID hug.
So it's July and you went from
Yeah.
complying, and you've consistently stayed that way? Because I haven't.
The rules haven't consistently stayed that way.
But I'm talking about whether or not you've
So-
been complying.
So did I
along the-
comply
along-
to the rules as the rules fluctuated?
The rules have been all over the place.
Because we're
Honestly,
not
I
wearing
don't
masks
know.
right now, and we are closer than 6 feet. In fact, each of
Yeah.
us is within 6 feet of each other.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get arrested for this. Could we get in trouble for this, like, legitimately?
No.
Like, would we be...
Well, CDC rules say that any indoor space, you should be wearing a mask.
Not your house.
This is your house.
This is in our house. Yeah.
That's true.
Um,
Mi casa, su casa.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes. So you raise a good point that the CDC rules continue to change, and that is inevitable. And I think I think anybody who was critically looking at this knew that would happen as more
also-
information came out.
They also haven't changed
more
as
testing.
much as people make it out. Like, yes, building, like, certain businesses have opened and closed.
Mm-hmm.
But, like...
Closer to
for
your
instance-
mic.
But for instance, the masks, it was one flop. It started out like, don't get masks because they wanted them to go to, what did it call them?
PPE.
PPE and
Is it
essen-
PPE?
Well,
personal
PPE,
protective equipment.
Yeah.
but they wanted to go to essential workers who
Yeah,
work
yeah.
in hospitals.
First
things like
line.
that, right? First line. So they were like, no, like, you don't need to wear masks right now. Like, don't do it, because they were afraid everyone's going to buy masks like we bought toilet paper.
Yeah.
So they were like, don't do that. And then as soon as kind of they got what they needed, all of a sudden the rules came out and changed. And it was like, yeah, of course masks are a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
But anyone in the know that wasn't publicly broadcast was saying you should be wearing masks the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
This is what every other country's done, blah, blah, blah. So like that's the one big flip flop that I saw besides the businesses going crazy where you never know, like, can I get my nails done this week or not?
Well, we can talk about the flip flop because this is a very important point that I want to make a little bit later, but I want to get some reflection out of you guys of how you have like thought about whether or not choosing whether or not to comply or defy. And I'll lead with that. And I'd say that during the month of March and strongly into April, I don't think it was until May that I even allowed people at my house other than me and my partner, right? Like it was just her and I in the house, and then I didn't have people coming in. And then over time, it was like, well, I'll have a buddy over. I had you over for, was it spaghetti or something?
Spaghetti.
Memorable meal. And then after a while, you're hanging outside, and then, we have nurse friends, and then none of us have COVID. So we were like, why don't we just hang out? So then I started hanging out with buddy Evan and some other buddies. And then last weekend I went mountain biking with a buddy. Sunday I went climbing with a buddy. Yesterday I went climbing with a buddy. So here I am defying some rules, but then I'm also complying by wearing a mask indoors, keeping 6 feet away from people in general, right? Like I'm just not trying to invade. And frankly, I like people staying away. Like it's amazing to all of a sudden become Moses while you're walking down the street and just part like the sea of people.
That really bothered me when I saw that for the first couple.
Me too.
It actually still bothers me now.
So
it bothers me so
one of my buddies was like, dude, why does it matter? Because it doesn't affect you. And I'm like, I think it's something that I just don't want to see continue to happen. So there's this bridge that crosses over into Kensington, and it's a walking bridge. My partner and I are going out for a walk. And this woman waited until we crossed that entire bridge just to walk. And there's like room for 5 on this bridge. Like if 5 people lined up in a row, maybe 6 lined up in a row, they'd probably fill the whole thing. She waited just across. And it was just like, man, there's
been countless situations like that. I think that all of us have experienced, but it's not friendly to see that. And we come from a friendly culture. We smile when we go down the streets. My neighborhood, everybody kind of is tight. So well, maybe not everybody. In Ocean Beach, it can be deadly. But it's friendly to see your neighbor on your normal walks. Like if you're out walking the dogs and everybody waves and everybody smiles, and you can share some commonality because you're all together. But now those same people, you can walk down the street and like you said, it's like Moses parting the sea. And it's sad.
So back again to this like conformity versus compliance versus defiance. So I also want to clarify that I don't have family here. I don't have elderly people that I interact with. I don't have vulnerable people that I interact with. So if, let's say my father was here, my family was here, and I wanted to see them, I would probably cut social ties just to protect them, right? Like but I see you guys, right? Like, so for me, the level of risk, and you even freaking had COVID.
Yeah. I've been largely conforming.
I didn't know that, and I'm sitting across from you.
Yeah. I've had all my tests though, and every single one has come up negative. But I'm 99% sure that my wife and I both had COVID.
Yeah.
And we know a few other people who did as well. And a lot of them got it from around the same time, around the same place.
I have a question. How can you be 99.9% sure that you had it when all your tests came back negative?
Great question.
Well, you got it like 2 months later.
Well, so like the way I can be so sure of it is like when you look, like when I first came down with it, right? It's terrifying because it happened really early on. Like it happened, so like April, like the moment COVID hit, my like business basically like closed down, right? So we all started working from home. I had my wage cut back almost instantly. And then almost just as fast, like that week or something, all of a sudden I had like really strange, like almost like a hot flash type feeling, like I was going through menopause or something. And then that kind of came and went, but I didn't know what that was. So it freaked me out, right? Because I'm like, COVID's going around and I don't know what the heck this just was. So I researched like crazy. what are all the symptoms? How are people?
You
dealing
Google
with it?
med yourself?
I Google medded the crap out of myself. I have like 6 forms of cancer apparently. That's the joke, right? But like, what was kind of amazing about it though is I researched it all, and then really all of my symptoms lined up with like what the symptoms were.
Shortness
And
of breath.
shortness of breath. Like I had aches and pains. I had nausea. I had headaches.
Did you lose your sense of smell?
I never lost my sense of smell or taste. Like there was one day where my taste was like more metallic. It was extreme exhaustion. Like I couldn't walk around the block. It was like hard to get up to go get a drink of water, things like that. And I never had a cough, and I never had a fever, which were really weird because like fever is like one of the main ones. So like the interesting thing is like I'm quite sure that I had it because when you really look into what all the symptoms were, it lines up quite like spot on. And I've never been sick like that in my entire life.
I gotta be the skeptic though, and I gotta
Yeah.
ask how many other things that could be out there to have mimicked those same symptoms. I mean, even just stress can cause some of those symptoms, right? Stress of losing your job, stress of society closing down, the stress of all that coming on together, mountain, piled upon your shoulders. I don't know. I would say consult a medical professional, see what they say.
I did see a doctor, and then I did the tests later. But at the time when and this is part of where we screwed up our handling of COVID. At the time, the instructions were, if you think you have it, stay home.
Stay home.
That was it. Don't get tested because we need to ration those tests for people who might actually need it.
Which I want to say, if you're ever sick, stay the fuck home.
Stay home, right?
Like this is something that people are doing now, but like you'd see people sick out and you're just like, what the hell, dude?
Yeah.
Our work just like, dude, go home.
Wow.
Why are you here?
I know my boss was at work like coughing and hitting an inhaler for weeks before that. And I was like, dude, like,
just go
what
home.
are you doing? Like, get out of here. You're freaking me out.
Yeah, I mean, being sick with the flu is one thing, but if you think that you have COVID, I think that it is important to go get tested because you have to start looking at that contact tracing.
Okay, so
I think that the tests early on though weren't that accurate.
Sure,
though, I don't think. So anyway, so that's kind of part of it.
And abundant.
But to your question though, of like,
how did you choose to either comply or defy? Have you defied?
So
have you defied things? Because right now I'm hearing a bunch of conformists, and I know I'm not sitting with a bunch of conformists.
No, like my compliance, I feel like wasn't even by choice. Like basically, the moment kind of COVID became like a real thing, I basically felt like I had it. And then so for like 2 months, I was like, well, I really shouldn't go anywhere.
I didn't see your ass.
Yeah, like I like went into a little hole and I just like hung out and watched Netflix.
It was responsible.
Did work and stuff. Because like the last thing I want to be responsible for is getting someone else sick. But then we did have a few choice friends who were brave souls who didn't care. One of Katie's friends would like come over now and again.
In the healthcare industry.
Well, she thinks she had COVID too because she had COVID toes.
COVID toes.
COVID toes.
Oh yeah, well Courtney came over too. Yeah, and she definitely had it, but her test came up negative too, and she super had it. She is a doctor at Kaiser, and she had 103 fever for 12 days straight.
Holy
Went up and down between 105 and 101.
Yeah.
She was showing us like she hooked us up with like all kinds of like medications and stuff, and she was showing us the her heart rate monitor and like O2 sensor, pulsometer, oximeter thing. I think the camera just stopped filming. Pause. How's this going, Sanad?
We're getting off topic, but that's okay.
I'm getting to your point though.
Yeah, you're getting to it. I like the story.
We both had COVID.
Did it turn off?
Yeah, I'm switching the battery.
Are you being politically correct right now? Because I noticed you avoided the question.
I was getting to it. Jesus fucking Christ.
Sanad had to hear himself talk.
Yeah, then Sanaa needs to fucking hear himself talk over here. Do you need a mirror too? Check your hair.
No, I'm already masturbating under the table. I'm good.
Yeah, the point that I'm kind of meandering my way to is that like I followed all of the guidelines for the most part, not really by choice. Like once I was sick, and I was like I shouldn't go anywhere. Yeah. And then everything closed anyway, and I was already working from home.
Right.
And then if I walk my dog around the block, I don't wear a mask.
Yeah.
I think that's crazy.
And that's kind of the point that I made by the bars closing. This is all conforming by not will of conformity, but forced conformity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will get into, have I been completely conforming? No, but it's also important to understand that that's been up and down with the regulations. So right now, probably a little bit more so than other times. But
Conforming?
laws are a little bit more relaxed. Laws are a little bit more loose.
I'm way more
And they're not even
relaxed.
laws. It's just
Yeah, they're not laws.
it's recommended
Guidelines.
I'm way more
guidelines.
relaxed about it now after having felt like I had it.
Yeah.
'Cause I
It's
feel
like-
all right, I kind of know what we're dealing with here.
Do you want to color in the lines or you don't?
It's not,
Yeah.
it's not Ebola.
I think that like the important question is reflecting on how you reacted when the world started to fall apart. That's what you want to get to.
We gotta reflect first, though. That's what I do want to get to, because we will talk
Yeah.
about the world falling apart.
So yeah, we'll wait till the
and in
battery
some
comes
ways,
back
because it's
on.
our world, right? Because New Zealand has their shit together.
Vietnam. 0 deaths.
Wow. And we're way closer to China than we are.
They must
Little
not
bit.
be testing.
That's very possible too.
You know, that's the other thing. Like the number of deaths
Yeah.
and stuff. Like the testing's crazy.
Mhm.
Who's actually doing it?
Man shot in the head 36 times, dies from COVID.
Did you see that article too?
Yeah.
No, damn. Poor bastard. If he just avoided it.
I know, but just, if somebody just wore
If
a
he
fucking
just
mask.
contact traced.
Dude. To imagine
just
to
wore-
survive a horrific event like that and just to die to COVID. It's freaking stupid.
Brutal.
Oh,
Some people
shit.
just can't catch a break.
Right? It's like you get hit by a car and then die of cancer in the middle of it. You didn't know you had.
Is there any way to see where we left off and pick back up?
Well, I think it made a sound, right?
Yeah.
So
like,
he was
I-
in his story of
Yeah.
the pedophilia tool that he used. What'd you call it? Pet what?
I was in the middle of explaining that I
Pedophilia.
was kind of forced to follow the rules,
All right.
not by any like real choice.
Fresh battery?
Yeah, fresh batteries, we're back, we'll be good for however long. In a way, I kind of feel like that was good because it gives us a chance to like regroup and like check in and make sure we're like doing this
We're good.
to Sanon's liking.
And also to remember next time to have a fresh battery to start.
Motherfucker!
So you remember the other battery that we used last time?
Yeah,
That,
yeah.
like, lasted forever. That was the same battery.
Oh, damn.
I never charged it. So that's how much battery we get out of
All right.
God damn it, Hollis.
Making a checklist here.
Yeah.
Sanan, did you remember your headphones?
No.
Hollis, did you charge the battery?
This
Scott,
is a
did you read
clean,
Sanan's
fresh
memoir?
battery, yeah.
On the John. You
Love
need to do it on the John. It's where you get the most thinking
Super
done.
good. Hello, hello.
Okay.
Do you want me to finish the story?
Yeah,
out?
yeah.
finish
the
it
story.
up.
So you had COVID.
I had COVID.
You were complying.
The world was shutting down. I was already working from home, and I was basically working for like 2 or 3 hour stints, and then I'd have to like go lay on the couch for a while and like focus on breathing. And I swear to God,
Sorry, dude.
it was shitty. Like it was really bad. And but the crazy thing is, I've had flus before that were way worse.
Mhm.
This was like less intense, but just for longer.
Ugh.
So people have all these different experiences with it, but for me, it was
I
just
heard
like
it lasts.
2-month thing where like every day I'd like check in on work. You know, we do like a meeting stand up, a Zoom meeting stand up, and they'd be like, "So how are you feeling today?" And I stopped answering the question because I was like, I don't like right this moment. I'm kind of okay, but this thing might like kick my ass at like 3 o'clock,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna be like fetal. You know, like I never really got that bad, but like
Mm-hmm.
it was just totally unpredictable. So anyway, so like I've been really good at following the rules and guidelines for the most part. The only one that I absolutely hated, like passionately, was shutting down the beaches.
Why?
It just doesn't like I'm all right if things make scientific sense. And you know, like, all right, so if you're in a closed environment in a group of people, wear a mask. Makes sense to me, totally.
Grocery stores.
Grocery stores, you know, department stores, whatever.
Yeah, people
But-
are disgusting.
Mhm.
But you're at the beach. Like, how often are you like shoulder to shoulder, like with people at the beach? Like, so for me, like if I'm surfing or something,
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm like, no, like leave the beaches out of this. They have nothing to do with this.
Yeah, dude, they pulled surfers off the beach at first. I thought, I was like, dude, that is the biggest rip, dude, because that is a socially distant activity.
Do you surf on top of someone else? No, you don't.
If
you
I'm trying something new,
Like,
right?
get the fuck away.
No,
you go over there.
Yeah,
I understood that when they did that because they didn't understand exactly how airborne it was. So you're sitting out in the water. I mean, I surf. People are sneezing. They're blowing their nose in the water.
Yeah,
they're doing all kinds of disgusting things in the water. You really don't know how far, how fast, and how often it could travel, right?
You know what really blew me away was like the reports that came out where they tried to back it up scientifically.
Yeah.
Like I read this article that explained how like the COVID would leave you go into the ocean, and then as waves break, the spray and mist from the waves would make it more contagious. And I'm like, you're telling me I can wash my hands for 10 seconds without even soap, and that's going to kill COVID?
While it penetrates
in the ocean,
Yeah.
hundreds of feet from other people, the mist from a wave is... I read an article that tried to pass that off, and you're like, have we all lost our minds?
It's cell splitting.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. The molecules are bursting and they're multiplying.
My simple, what do they call it? Brain doesn't comprehend these scientific
So
concepts.
let me well, I like how you made that decision. It's like, so you had this decision where you're like, this is something I'm not willing to conform to, which was wearing a mask or going to the beach.
I got yelled at by a few lifeguards.
But for going to the beach.
Yeah.
Which this is your home and you love the beach.
I need the beach.
Need the beach. Anything else that you like have willfully been like, you know what? I'm going to say no to this one.
So where I draw the line is basically like, one, is it like, does it seem scientifically relevant to have a rule for that?
Okay.
If it does, for the most part, I'm for it. If there's like, and I'm quite conscious personally of like someone's age. Like if you look at the stats, it seems like this is much, much, much more deadly for old people or people with underlying conditions. So if I'm like we did a Zoom wedding up in LA.
That's funny. We did one too.
It was kind
We're
of
in
awesome,
Mammoth. Yeah, we did one.
And so you had like the wedding party, which was at the house, which was maybe 10 or 15 people. And then everybody kind of tuned in on Zoom. But for the 10 or 15 people that were at the house, it was basically in the middle of COVID, this awesome old-fashioned
rebels
house party, just taking shots, having a great time.
Yeah.
Pretending that none of this existed. Had there been one person that wasn't in our age group there, I'd have like worn a mask and I'd have been like super like, I'm gonna hang out on the deck or something. But like,
and where do you draw the line of like older person?
I don't know. It depends how old they look.
They look, yeah.
I mean, it's clearly
50s, older, upper 50s.
For me, it's like, if they're like probably like mid 40s
and above.
Yeah, mid 40s and above. Like I'm actually kind of more cautious and doing my part to try to not get sick.
So I live in a complex where I have a lot of elderly people. I mean, there's people that are upwards into their 70s, 80s. There's also some young people where they're in their 20s, right? I do not wear a mask in my facility. So this is a conscientious, I'm not doing this, but I'm not around people.
The reason your facility, just so people are clear, is outside. So when you step outside of your door, you are outside. You're not in a contained hotel like environment.
Right. So when COVID hit, we have a pool and a lot of us would congregate by the pool, hang out by the pool, drink beers, have the feet in there. I did physical therapy after breaking my leg in the pool, those types of things. But there's common elements that you can touch that everybody touches. Our door handle to get into our complex, elevator buttons.
The elevator,
Yeah. Now they put a lock on the trash, so every person in the facility has to touch the trash. But they've also closed the pool, which not everybody uses the pool.
I hate
so
this
it's
closing
the
of
stupid
pools.
it's the redundant or the recklessness, I think, that you would close something without having it be a blanket policy for everything else.
What do you mean?
So, well, you want to close the pool to keep people away from it, but now you're locking the lock on the trash, so now everybody has to touch it.
The inconsistency.
It's the inconsistency.
Yeah.
So it's the inability to recognize that this is a fucking dumb mistake that you're doing it this way. This is making it difficult, and you're putting people in a parameter to be
Like,
able
why
to
wouldn't you
stick
shut
with
down
this.
the elevator? Oh, because you
Yeah.
have people who need to use the elevator to even get to their room.
Right.
But then what kind of, so do you
So
close
what-
off the elevator to everyone
But
else
hold
who
on.
doesn't
They
need
should
it?
shut down
But
the
what kind
stairwell
of there's
and the
safety there's
elevator.
safety measures that a complex could make to make the elevator sanitary. There's no hand sanitizer anywhere provided.
No.
There's no cleaning crew that comes in and sanitizes
I didn't think
every
so.
day, every night.
Never seen a
anything
maid
like that.
there.
Unlike our offices, we have that. It's
Same.
daily.
Mhm.
Now, of course, I'm not going into the office, but there are some staff members that do. But these are the policies that the offices are doing. They're cleaning down their desks, everybody's desks. They're going
Mhm.
through, they're wiping everything, sanitizing everything. But if my complex is so concerned about this, if other places are so concerned about this, how come they're not following those regulations that they're trying to bestow upon certain aspects themselves?
Yeah.
That's the weirdest thing about this thing is I feel like because we didn't really know exactly what or how to handle
Yeah.
it, we kind of made some stuff up and we're like, this feels like we're doing something.
Why did the government prevent us from going to BLM land?
Insane, right? Like it
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
no sense. Like, and and like total tangent. Sorry, Sanan.
No,
But,
you're
like,
good.
I feel like we went crazy when we banned straws. I know it's
What do you mean ban
unrelated.
straws?
We got rid of straws in California. We were
Plastic straws.
Like, yeah, we were like, oh, straws. These are what's filling up our landfills. No, they're not. No one cares about straws. Like,
No,
it doesn't matter.
dude,
I'm in a good mood.
It's
I'm on a
such-
good. I think that's a good thing. That we
Yeah,
did
I think it's
that.
a good thing.
Yeah.
Such BS. And we're like, no straws. Everybody get
Yeah.
rid of straws. I feel like
You
that
got
was
you
kinda-
got paper straws instead.
Yeah.
yeah, paper straws, whatever.
I think
But
the
I feel-
plastic bag thing was kind of a backfire. Instead of having these plastic bags, they made more durable plastic bags
Yeah.
that are going to take longer to
Also,
It had good intentions.
during
but-
good
COVID,
intentions,
a
but it
lot of
backfired.
grocery stores said you're not allowed to bring your own bags, and then they would charge you for bags.
right.
Right.
So
yeah.
you're like, wait a minute.
So the point that I'm trying to
Yeah.
make with this, and like, I feel like the straws was kind of an extreme, like it wasn't, I don't feel it had a huge societal benefit, but it made us feel good.
Mhm.
It was like, oh, we're really doing something.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of our things, like locking the trash, like why lock the trash?
Well, homeless
What does
people
that
get into
do?
it.
What's the worst thing that could happen? A homeless person steals your trash, or you get COVID, which is.
But how does
Yeah.
locking the trash stop you from getting COVID?
No, I think they
That's-
do,
it's-
I think they
it's-
do it for the homeless.
Yeah, it's for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
homeless.
Yeah, it's not for COVID.
So it had
It's for
nothing to do with
illegal
COVID.
dumping. Actually, is really
Oh,
what
okay.
it is, because people will oftentimes take furniture or whatever and throw it in the trash.
It's
cans.
horrible.
It's just
Yeah.
it's
And then a lot
I
of homeless
misunderstood.
people,
irresponsible. San
lot-
Diego.
a lot of
citizens.
homeless people just dig through trash and not put
Yeah.
the trash back.
Yeah, no, sorry, I misunderstood.
That's
I
like
thought
a
that was a
non-etiquette
preventative
thing.
measure to like make the place safe for
No.
COVID.
No,
Like,
It's to make the place safe from illegal dumping and from trash.
sure.
Well, let me give
Here's-
what I willfully chose
Buy that
to
for $1.
defy, because I comply with a lot of things, but right now I'm not complying with staying at home and not interacting with non-family members. I'm pretty much
breaking the law.
breaking the law. Outdoors, I don't wear a mask because I don't get close to anybody, and it's outside. We're not. It's very unlikely that my particles will hit you while you're 12 feet away from me outside while there's a nice breeze going on.
Unless you're making out outside.
With
Small.
but the person I'm making out with is
No.
gonna give. We're gonna share that stuff anyway.
It's not important.
So the reason why I wanted to just reflect on what are you willfully choosing to conform or defy is I was thinking about how this issue has become so political and people are getting into a fight. You sent me an article, Scott. Not an article, just like a news story. I'm sure it will become.
Man, I've seen so many headlines. Man stabs man for not wearing mask.
Yeah,
Bus driver murdered because
in France. Yeah.
because he was trying to enforce the passengers to wear masks. I mean, it's crazy.
So
and
the one Scott sent me was in OB, and this couple was eating. So you can't eat with a mask on. And this woman, older woman, probably in her 60s, I think. They said she was elderly.
60s, 70s.
And she approaches them, is like, you idiots, blah, 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 not wearing a mask. So she pulls out mace and tries to mace the woman, misses, and the husband steps in and gets a full can to the face.
Yeah.
Now they're pressing charges on
This
her.
is at Dusty
'Cause
Roads down in OB.
That is assault.
This was just last
Yeah.
week. Just last week.
Wait, but they were eating?
They were eating
They were
barbecue.
eating.
Eating barbecue at a picnic table. Woman comes up and accosts them with mace, just like he says.
Yeah, yeah.
Basically starts screaming, "You're a bunch of idiots for
That-
not wearing masks."
Mhm.
They're sitting there eating their lunch, playing with their puppy, and they get sprayed with this. And we have it's all caught on camera,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Just like you said earlier, everything's on camera. So they got the license plate of the lady. I'm sure charges are being filed
Yeah.
right now. I
Dude,
can't
that's assault.
imagine that that's not happening.
That's assault.
But it's just it's phenomenal to see the rift that people are
Mhm.
willing to continue to create.
Yeah.
And what side of the extreme that they're willing to step on.
Yeah.
Personally, you don't wear a mask, I'm not going to judge you for it. If you wear a mask, I'm not going to judge you for it. You have your own way of handling it.
And the thing is, too, when you're defying or complying, people can then use that as making assumptions about your political affiliations because this has become political,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, there's some studies that are showing. I saw a graph recently that said like 35 to 45% of people who are not wearing masks are Republicans. Or I'm sorry, the other way around are Democrats.
Who are not wearing masks?
Yeah, 35. So basically, the overwhelming majority of people who are wearing masks are Democrats.
Mhm.
The overwhelming majority of people who are not wearing masks are Republicans. And independents kind of fall, kind of teeter-totter in between there.
I'm sure they could break that down further because you have this. I heard this wonderful term called the illiberal, which I think the way that was being used was like, so you're liberal, but then you take it to this extreme, like anti-vaxxer type stuff.
Yeah,
Right?
That's I was actually
Because
just
those
thinking
people
that
would probably
too.
qualify as like they're like, I'm a liberal
It-
person.
I
it's
wonder how those people's positions are changing
how
right
far
now.
you are
Right?
on the hippie spectrum, you know, like you
Yeah.
go, like you pass right through Democrat and then you go like way over here. These guys don't wear masks.
Yeah,
When you
you're
get all
absolutely
the
right.
way over flat
Yeah.
out hippie,
Right.
they're like, I don't need that, man.
And they also share values with libertarians significantly. Only the
Yeah.
difference is that the empathy for libertarians is significantly lower. So I thought that was like super interesting. Whereas liberals come from a place of like, you must
Love and
protect,
inclusiveness.
you must protect empathy, all this stuff. And
Yeah.
so, and here's this interesting. So I want to transition this to this like topic I've been kind of struggling with, and we'll go back to this like bouncing back the regulations is how people are enforcing on behalf of the CDC or on behalf of what they believe onto others what they should be doing during COVID. So let me give you an anecdote that happened to me, and then we can kind of like explore this a little bit. So I was at Sprouts. It was early morning. I was just grabbing something, and we're all learning how to shop again. Right? Like we're all learning the new rules of shopping, and no one freaking knows what they're doing in the store anymore, right?
Was there tape on the ground telling you which direction to go in the
Yeah,
aisles at that point?
Yeah. There's like little circles that I stand
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
So like I stand in the circles, and I don't give a shit,
The
dude.
jelly
Dude, the
aisle
pirates
is
are
one
loving
way.
it, man. All these X's all over the place.
Badooch.
Aha!
Solid.
X marks
joke.
the spot, treasure.
So what I actually like about that, and this is where I've always found store managements to be so stupid, is that when you allow people to form lines from the aisle, they block the aisle, and it's like, dude, just create a gap for people to move through. And some people put the circles right in the aisle, so you're like moving around people anyway. So it's like you're trying to social distance, but then you put the circle in them anyway. So
Dumb move.
It's just common sense regularity that's coming back and biting them in the ass.
Yes.
It's the lack of it.
it's just lack of common sense. You literally put a circle in the middle of an aisle where people are still trying to cross. Anyway, so I'm standing in the circle, and this guy is 2 circles away from the next guy. So he's next in line. The cashiers look at him like, you gonna come up? Like she's looking at him. She's like 18, 19, probably freshly hired because we have a huge surge of new cashiers that have to be hired right now, right? Like that's so many places, Ralph's, Vaughn's are hiring because they need people to be able to work, right? So she looks like she's a new employee. She's looking at him, doesn't have the social skills to be like, come here, sir. She's just like giving him the eye. So I'm like, hey, buddy, you can go ahead. And he like looks at me and goes, you know, I'm just giving that guy space. And I was like, okay, like that's fine. You're managing yourself. So he moves ahead. I go to my next circle, which is at the end of the cashier line. Once he's paying, and I set down my stuff, and he goes, you know, you're only supposed to put your food down once they wipe the conveyor belt.
Yeah, you didn't know that?
So you got to chill, bro. And I just stared at him, and I was like, I wonder how many people would get offended enough and pissed off to like create an altercation because he's being a douche. And I'm like,
Question.
why? Yeah.
Question. Did he actually say chill, bro?
Yes.
Because up until
He did.
chill, bro, I feel like the whole thing was kosher. I feel like the whole thing was totally fine. The guy was in the right because you are supposed to wait till they wipe down the conveyor belt, then you go put your crap on it and pay.
And I
But
didn't
if
know
somebody told me to chill, bro, I'd be like, whoa, wait a second.
that. Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, this is about delivery. And
yeah,
like,
it's about delivery.
poor
and he said-
delivery for
yeah.
me. I'm the type of person where I'm going to get pissed off and I'm going to say something snarky back.
Right.
And it can escalate.
And how often has that situation happened? And it has escalated. And I'm sure it happens more often than not in today's climate because you not only have high tensions in general. So I was just like, don't tell me what the frick to do. Like in my head, but I'm like, I don't want to engage with you. It's early in the morning and I'm just going to let your
Pick and
gross
choose your
body
battles.
move on with
Do
your
you-
life.
Do you feel that he taught you, though, the rules of how to engage with the conveyor belt in the new COVID
So
world?
now I know how to shop. So
So-
now you're supposed to wait to get it wiped down.
Did you actually learn that in that moment?
I learned it in the moment and I still don't give a shit.
I just learned it now.
So did you know? Well, hold on. So,
didn't know this.
so the CDC has also rolled back, recognizing that the surface contact, is less potentially contracting. So, like if someone sneezes on something, you're not going to lick it up. That's disgusting, right? But if someone just touches something and they don't have like active, disgusting COVID everywhere, you're not very likely to pick up COVID. It's also, we're wearing masks, so we're not putting our hands in our mouth anymore or on our eyes. So
At
there's
the
that's something.
grocery store, though.
At the grocery store.
You know those bags, the bags that you put your vegetables in,
Mm-hmm.
they're impossible to open without licking your fingers.
I've never licked
I've
my
never licked my
fingers.
finger to open
What?
one of those.
You have?
Are you guys serious right
I'm
now?
dead
Yeah.
serious.
Never in your life.
I don't lick my fingers.
I don't
to
lick
turn
my fingers. I
pages
don't-
either. When I see
How do
people
you
do that,
do
I'm like,
that?
you are the fucking weirdest person I've ever seen in my
know, right?
life, you weirdo.
Yep.
You don't do it either?
No.
If you're watching this, comment below if you agree with me, because clearly these guys are
never
crazy.
licked
Never
a
done
bag.
it. Never. I don't think I've ever seen it.
I've never seen it either.
So now what I do is I sneak my finger in the mask like this, and I go,
Are you dead serious? So there's your defiance right there. That's gross, dude. That's
And
gross.
do not shop at Vaughn's,
But it's my
Ralph's,
bag.
Yeah, where do
or
you go?
any of
My
these
bag.
places.
It's
in
my bag.
Hillcrest.
I'm opening my bag. I'm not touching all the
Just
bags.
So
yeah,
that's true.
Do I? Yeah, I mean,
So
lick your finger. Oh, I don't like this avocado. I'm going to put this one back.
this is why it's important to wipe down the conveyor belt.
Oh.
So and at the same time with the conveyor belt, like I'm not really. Let's get aside from the new rule that I'm supposed to know, right? Like people are supposed to know. The point is, the guy was trying to exert some sort of authority, right? And here's kind of where I'm going with this: is that in today's climate, what I'm realizing is historically we have lost God. So this is, work with me here. Humans are innately religious creatures. Not saying that they innately believe in God. They innately find religion. Okay? They innately have this like spiritual calling that they look for something with higher authority, higher purpose, higher power, and then they seek to organize their moral structures, values, beliefs based on that. So, as we have lost God, people have replaced this with science. And what he was, some, not everybody, obviously, but people have replaced it with different things. You can figure this out. So
I'm
what-
following. Go
so you're
on.
following. So what I'm realizing is that people are now exerting moral authority on behalf of science, or let's say the CDC. And unfortunately, most people don't even understand research methodology, let alone virology or clinical trials, how to develop a vaccine. So you have potentially scientifically illiterate people providing authority on behalf of science to a population who is also illiterate. So let's say you have a literate person who's literate in science.
I understand what
You see
you're
what I'm
saying,
saying?
but what I don't understand is the correlation that you're trying to make with why are they building this illiterate stance with God? Like, I don't understand that. Get to that for me.
Okay. So people seek out to have this sort of moral foundation,
A
right?
guideline.
Right. the moral foundation that we have developed around COVID is that if you wear a mask, if you do these things, you are saving lives. So from that premise, you can take, you're like, okay, I'm developing this moral fundamental that I believe I am saving lives. Therefore, if I see you not complying, you are prioritizing your selfish interests over lives. So I'm pulling this sort of moral authority that is stemming from scientific evidence that
So
if
in current times, though, with people who follow any religion other than, say, the extremists, the small number of people in the world that are extreme, violent religious believers, what moral authority are they really projecting on you in mass throughout society?
Okay. Not everyone who believes in religion exerts moral authority over others.
Okay.
You all have experienced at some point someone who believes that you should change your life based on the moral foundations of the religion they have.
Absolutely.
And you also know people who are religious who say, I'm managing my fucking self and you do whatever you want. I'm sticking to my beliefs and I don't have to tell you what to do. I don't have to tell you that you should believe anything. Do you see the distinction there?
So what you're trying to say then is that
People have found a new religion.
they found a new cult.
Yes.
They found a new cult to band with and force.
That they don't understand any better than they did before.
I like it.
Because what you have is you do have people who are scientifically literate. Now, let me just continue down this rabbit hole for a minute. You have people who are scientifically literate, but what happens when you're trying to exert scientific authority over people? So let's say you have a doctor telling the country, hey, this is the best we know. This is what you should do. And you have a scientific illiterate audience who hears that and says, you're fucking bullshit.
Or the other way around.
You're lying to me.
Yeah, or the other
This
way
is a
around.
conspiracy.
They buy choice words and choice practices that may not be the actual advised information that the doctor's trying to say.
What do you mean? I'm going to rub crystals instead?
No, well, that could be one. But one instance comes to my mind specifically where I see the person who's driving down the road who has the face mask hanging off of the rear of your mirror, right? Yeah, you're supposed to wear a face mask while you're in public, but are you supposed to put that up on there too when the CDC says clean your face mask?
I have never cleaned my face mask.
Yeah, me either.
You're supposed to clean it.
Yeah, you're supposed to. They actually have instructions on how to clean it and how to care for it. But then you see these people who are devoutly supportive of wearing a face mask, but not supportive of following the appropriate cleanly hygiene rules.
That's one of my defiant acts that I just willingly defy.
Not cleaning your mask?
Yeah.
That's just pure lazy.
That's
not a position.
I clean mine actually, and quite often I find myself
never.
without a mask because I have all my masks hanging up drying.
I also just love the smell of my beard.
That's the thing is I can't stand the smell of my face mask after I've worn it for a week. It's disgusting.
I don't wear it that much. I wear it inside in a grocery store, but that's about it. Or if I go into a restaurant, which I don't do very often anymore.
I will walk down the road and I'll put my face mask on. Like if I'm going to be on Newport, busy road, I'm going to have my face mask on. So I wear it enough in large populated areas that my face mask is getting dirty.
I will say I have not been walking in populated areas, so that's a big difference. And I don't know how comfortable. Maybe I would feel uncomfortable. But so
Simon, let's go back to this for a second.
Yeah.
So you've kind of painted this really big picture that there's
and we can whittle it down from there.
Yeah, but that basically you're making this case that this kind of dissolution in the belief in God for a lot of people has kind of been replaced, or you can, swap these two things out for this belief in do masks actually help people? This do you buy into the science of what, how to prevent COVID?
And just to make sure that we're covering our bases, it doesn't have to be replaced with science. It could be replaced with so many other things, but many people are replacing it with science.
I think what you're pointing out in my mind is this division around, do you believe in institutions or not? And I think it's more, in my mind, it's easier to wrap my head around that because there's this concept of public safety. And we were talking about this the other day. There are hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of things that we all come together as a society and agree this is safer. Seatbelts is a great example. When seatbelts first came out in the 60s, there were a ton of people that were like, seatbelts
Do you
are
not like
murder.
wearing a
I think that wearing a seatbelt should be a personal choice unless you're a minor. And if you're a minor, then you should wear it. But as an adult,
What
I
does
should
mining
have-
for coal have to do with wearing a seatbelt?
yeah, well,
And so seatbelts
Wow.
have
That was
proven
a terrible joke.
Seatbelts have proven to save like hundreds of thousands of lives a year.
Yeah.
And like cigarettes,
Mhm.
we were all smoking them. At first they were healthy. And then like I have this whole other tangent, but like basically we came together. We said secondhand smoke is bad for you. Smoking causes cancer. It's
Mhm.
expensive. This is bad for us.
I just think it
Let's-
smells like shit.
Let's make it harder for people to smoke. How about safety laws for streets, stop signs, stoplights, like building codes? Like
Yeah.
I can go on and on. Like as a society, we come together and rally around things that are in the best interest of all. So I think what you're seeing from people today is they don't believe in the authority figure that's giving these instructions right now. And some of these waffling things that you pointed out earlier
Mhm. Don't help.
don't help. That's a part of why, right? They're like, well, first you told us to wear a mask, then you tell us not to.
It's just like climate change. It's like,
Well-
you said it was going to get hotter, but this was the coldest year ever.
Right.
You're fake news.
you hit the nail on the head, though, talking about the leadership. I think it's a big problem having poor leadership in that there isn't solidarity that stands behind our leaders right now. I mean, I want to go to the 9/11 incident, right?
Mhm.
Where we all banded behind America. Even our allies banded behind America, stood, for justice from the terrorists, got together because it was a victimhood thing that happened within our own borders, right? And our leadership stepped up and said some very profound things that got the groups all together, Republican, Democrat. It was bipartisan.
It also
They
wasn't
came
pointing
together.
to any. It wasn't like being like, "Hey,
Yeah.
it's the Mexicans in the country." It didn't say stuff like it's these people in our
Right.
country
Well,
who
and-
are the problem.
And
you
let's
know,
just like really look at this like objectively, right? So you've got two people standing in front of the nation. You've got, what's that guy's name that everybody-
Fauci.
and you've got Trump, right? So they're standing up there in front of everyone, right? Fauci is saying it's important for us to take this seriously, wear masks.
Mhm.
And then Trump is tweeting crazy stuff,
Yeah.
saying the exact opposite. And then meanwhile, they're standing next to each other. And we're supposed to just be like, oh, yeah, we know what to do.
yeah.
When the two people that
on
we
top of
turn
that too,
to-
you have the media who spins it their own preferenced way too.
So like, I'm
Well,
just a
haven't you ever
citizen
injected bleach? That is a pretty effective way
I'm
to
just a
kill
citizen.
bacteria.
looking for guidance here? And so on one side, I've got somebody saying this is all crazy and not real. And then on the other, I've got this Fauci guy saying, no, this is very real. Take it very seriously. We're all screwed.
Right.
And then, I voted for that. I voted for Trump.
Mhm.
So if I voted for Trump, who am I going to side with? This random scientist or the guy that I've staked my reputation on that I'm like in his camp?
And I know for a fact you didn't vote for Trump. What you're saying is,
No, I grudgingly voted for him.
okay.
Yeah,
But
it
I
was
know- I
hard.
just-
I swear to God, it was hard to mark that box. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. What am I
Yeah.
doing with my life?
I was like, I'll do it, but like, I don't feel good about this.
So to this religious, you said institutions. Do people believe in institutions? And I do want to, because I want to talk about the institutional part because that's important. But I also want to say that these institutions, the underpinnings are from scientific evaluation, scientific evidence. So they're getting their information from the best science that they have access to, or the best research they have access to, which is also flawed, right? Like, think you're trying to interpret the external world through a human lens, just like you're trying to interpret the word of God through a human lens. So you can have very different perspectives on the same study.
So this is a point on leadership, right?
Mhm.
When you're in a leadership position, sometimes it's your job to do things that are not popular or may seem like they're kind of in against the better grain, but in fact, it's the right thing to do. So let's hypothetically assume that the CDC or whoever these people are came together and decided we don't want people hoarding masks right now because our frontline workers actually need this stuff, right? And right now we can't get our hands on it. We don't know how bad this thing's going to be. So they make a conscious choice to mislead the American public. they make a conscious choice to say, no, masks aren't important right now.
This is hypothetical.
You don't need this. Well, then this is my theory of what happened. I think that's why they initially came out and they were saying we don't have, like, there isn't enough scientific evidence to prove that masks are what we need right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then later, they came back and changed their tune because it was obvious, yes, this is what you need to do.
I don't know. It's a interesting perspective and an interesting theory, but I think that there's enough resources within the government that if they really wanted to go and cut supply chain to be able to hoard the resources, they could have. National Guard, for example, send everybody out there, go buy all the face masks from all the stores. It can happen just like that.
Not so sure. I mean, at the time, there was a huge shortage of this stuff. Look at what happened. Toilet paper dried up in like all the stores, right?
It's because National Guard got a hold of it.
So the point that I'm making here is, like, had they done what I think is the ethical thing, and you give the citizens, you give the population the cold, hard facts, and you give them what they need to know to make informed decisions themselves, then, maybe there would have been a harder time for our frontline workers to have these things. But you should trust your people. And if we can't trust our own citizens, what are we living in?
Well, I think the problem with that is that you're assuming that there are cold, hard facts, and there are not.
So
and that's what people are having a tough time with, because, like you said, once the fact changes, then why should I believe you at all? Which is not, in my view, the correct assumption to make. The underlying assumption is we don't know what we're getting into, and this game is going to change. The rules are going to change, and we're going to have to adapt. But people don't want that. They say, I want to know the rules, and once you change the rules, then I can change the rules, right?
I obviously can't.
And what's worse too is you have fact A coming from person A, fact B coming from person B, and they're contradictory.
It's the word of God interpreted through different lenses.
But then you look at, how other countries did handle it.
Mm-hmm.
You got like South Korea and China, and they like squashed this stuff like a bug.
Yeah.
They all wore masks.
Bug.
Like, yeah.
At what costs? And that's what a lot of people are questioning right now, which is a lot of the people that are questioning face masks.
China did it at extreme cost, but South Korea did it in a really responsible way. Like, if you were they did massive testing, like immediately. Massive testing, which we didn't even know how to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then basically, if you had it, you self-quarantined, and they would ship you supplies from the government to keep you in your house, and they would check on you every day and be like, how are you doing? They weren't checking on you every day like in China where they're like bolting your door.
I'm gonna need a bottle of lube, a bottle of bourbon.
Yeah. But I also think that
I got a lot of time to kill.
It's hard to compare those two because we are a different type of country. We have a very diverse population. Not just ethnically, but in our viewpoints of things.
And geographically.
Geographically diverse.
But you're talking about
we have the biggest economy in the world, so you have a lot of transactions happening at any given time. New Zealand, dude, I think it's like the sheep have a greater population than the people, and they were able to crush this, but they're also a lot more homogeneous than we are as a country.
Right. You're talking about this ethical conversation of like, what have we chosen to defy, like throughout COVID, right? Like,
Yeah, we're going to circle back to that.
Well, yeah, that's where I'm going now. Like me sneaking my finger into like lick the bag so I can open the stupid thing, right? Like the CDC had an ethical decision to make, and I feel they made the wrong one, and they're paying the price for it now politically. And
what's the wrong decision? Just so I'm clear.
So I believe the right decision is you give people the cold, hard facts and you give them the accurate information. Mm-hmm. You don't intentionally manipulate information to kind of control the way people are going to act. So if I withhold, like if I know, like I'm a scientist and I actually know that masks are what is needed, right? Mm-hmm. And then I go, well, there's also this shortage of masks. So I'm going to, in knowing this fact, I'm going to tell the general public, you don't need masks right now. We don't know enough about it. Mm-hmm. Don't worry about the mask thing.
So are you saying that the CDC intentionally said the masks aren't a big deal in order to
get more masks to the frontline workers?
And is that confirmed, or is that something that you're like assuming?
Hypothetical conspiracy.
Okay.
I'm assuming 100%.
Because I'm like, wait, what?
But, I don't know. But if you look into it, though, like the people who are scientists who know this type of like virology or whatever you want to call it, right? Mm-hmm. They all knew. Everyone, like they all knew. China knew, South Korea knew.
Yeah.
All these are so there's
Well,
like,
dude,
why
Chinese
on
people
earth-
been knowing, like SARS, like people.
so why
you-
on earth
yeah.
would our people come forward and say this one thing when everyone who's kind of in the know knows the other?
Mhm.
So that's where it comes from.
There was a perspective that I saw in an interview. They had this Chinese lady. She was from obviously China directly. She wasn't an American citizen from China. She was a Chinese individual.
Yeah. No, I
And
got
she
that.
she
That's what
visited
I figured.
China, and she said we wear masks out of courtesy for other people.
Mm.
It's not because we're afraid of you. We wear it because of courtity for our other
Right.
people.
Again,
And-
a much more homogeneous
Yeah.
population, though.
I mean, that's just a humble perspective to think about. When I first started seeing people wearing masks, I was like, come on, really? Like, it's San Diego. The numbers aren't staggering. It's not high. Not
True.
everybody immediately has COVID just because the news is starting to publicize it.
Exactly.
That was my stance on it. And then now as that built into people wearing masks almost everywhere I go at all times, like, okay, maybe they're doing it to be polite because they don't want to expose themselves to other people, whatever. Everybody handles it differently. It's just where we're at now. I think that it's important not to identify what we looked at as factual, but where are we going forward to stop this?
Mhm.
Because everybody wants to get life back to what they had before.
Mm-hmm. That's not
So
happening.
what's the correct path? Is it everybody wears a mask and just we all buckle down and get rid of this? Or is it, fuck it, you're infringing my liberties because I have to wear a mask now. Let's just see what's going to happen and roll the dice.
Yeah.
You were mentioning that you had a conversation actually with Hollis about Pascal's wager. This is something I'm very familiar with.
Well-
I studied philosophy.
Hollis, do you remember what you said?
Uh,
Because you did not know what Pascal's wage.
No, I didn't know what it was, but I was making. I can't remember the connection I was making.
Let me tell.
So-
I'll
I
so
kind of
Hollis.
organically found
So
my way
then
to it.
let you get to your point because
Yeah.
this is why I was talking about religion and I was like, he just described this
Oh, yeah,
situation
right.
and I was like, dude, of course this is religious because it comes back to
Right.
arguments like this. Do you want to say it?
Well, no, you
Okay.
go ahead with this.
So I was talking to Hollis about this, and he goes, well, let's look at this way in terms of complying or defying and how you choose which one to do. And he's asking me seriously. He's not asking me as like, oh, I'm giving you a hypothetical. He was like being serious, and
Yeah.
you were
I was
figuring
talking
out
through the logic.
you were talking through the logic about how you decided to comply. And he said, if COVID is on two extremes of possibility, meaning COVID is everything that we've heard is completely true. It's highly contagious. You take it at its absolute biggest truth. And then the other binary part, which this is a complete hoax.
Well,
Which one are you going to choose? Are you going to take the safe bet and choose to comply, or are you going to take the other bet to defy, and it turns out that it was true, or it turns out that it was a hoax? Like,
so let me
so-
put Pascal's wager.
that's Pascal's wager,
Yes, but you're missing some
except
stuff.
with God
So
and believing in Him,
imagine a box.
eternal salvation.
I wish I had. studied
Imagine a box,
philosophy.
and you
That's
have four
actually
corners in the box. And here's how Pascal's wager would be applicable for this:
Mhm.
a mask helps in one corner, a mask does not help in another corner. No mask could have helped, and no mask could not have helped.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's four corners essentially: believing,
Mhm.
not believing. Could it have helped? Could it not have helped? And that's how your roulette essentially is.
Right.
That's how your choices are.
and people are making
So-
decisions like this.
Sure. I mean, those are the
yeah,
choices.
this
Those are the
is the choice.
That's
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
That's
So
it.
where I'm at with this is mask could have helped. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. Quadrant
And-
3.
Yeah. However you want to quadrant them. Yeah. No quadrant 4. But I'm in the mask could help. Why not just do it? Why not? That's where I'm at. Where are you?
Well, that's it, and I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
Only
I'm not going in the store and being like, screw it, I'm not wearing a
Yeah.
mask.
Yeah,
Fuck.
but
I really just don't want the problem.
Yeah,
to be
I'm only
honest.
there though if I feel like it's justified. Like if I'm walking my dog around the block, I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not even bringing it.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, like I'm just not doing it.
Yeah.
You know.
And that's something that's good about San Diego is that it's not required to wear a mask everywhere you go. It's just under large group, exposure to the populace.
Mhm.
You're sitting out on your street, walking your dog, you're hanging out in your backyard, you don't need a mask. Places like New York, you need it to. Man, you're on top of each other.
So many
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. So recently I was up in Malibu and came back home, stopped at a restaurant, and they had this sticker on the table. And you're supposed to text in and identify who you are and who's in your party. You're supposed to literally like text the restaurant.
I would.
So
I would not
that
even.
way they could do that.
I wouldn't even dive
Like,
there.
I didn't even think about this. The waiter came over and explained that, like, please text when you get a chance. And I'm like, whatever. We already ate and we're getting ready to bug out. And come to find out, like, after thinking about that sticker a little bit more, oh, that was for contact tracing. That's
Yeah.
a good idea, actually.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
I personally don't like to have my phone number out with anything at
No.
all. Like, I avoid
Such an
giving
old
my
man.
phone number. Yeah.
My email, you're gonna
Fuck, dude.
get
I don't want those Chinese robots telling
Yeah.
me that I need to send my money to some Cantonese,
My concern is that
those
becomes,
spam calls. Russia's starting to do
Yeah,
this
yeah.
now.
My concern is this becomes a normal practice.
Yeah.
That's a big concern
I mean,
of mine.
it seems like a blatant, just like if you're like a super civil liberties person, this concept is terrifying, right? Like the sushi
Yeah.
place near our house has this little like iPad, and you walk up and put your face in a circle, and then they like hit you with the temperature gun,
Yeah,
and then it like blinks you okay, and then you go on. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like contact tracing, it's all that.
I'll stay on lockdown.
So like
man. I won't go to
those two
restaurants.
concepts are just at complete odds, right?
Yeah.
Like the idea of just total civil liberties and concept tracing
Hmm.
or contact tracing. I mean, they're just you can't. How do you do both? It
I mean,
seems impossible.
Like, what happens when the person who shows up and they have a fever and that little device has touched you, 300 other people?
No,
No, it's
It's
not
a gun.
touching. It's like a little
It's a
distance gun.
gun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So okay, so
It's a swab. We all lick it.
Yeah.
so to this Pascal's wager, I think that
I
have
gotta
you seen
stop licking doorknobs,
have you seen
guys.
that
That's
Parks
why I
and
keep getting
Are you guys
COVID.
seen Parks and Rec?
No. I
There's
don't
like
watch it.
this is weird way that people drink out of the fountain in Pawnee, the town, and what they do is rather than drink out of the fountain like any normal human being, is they put their entire mouth over the, the spigot.
That's so good.
You're just like
You know what
Don't
Yeah, you don't
waste
do that.
water.
don't waste water, right? Okay, so back to this, like it kind of stems to Pascal's wager, but it also stems to the changing CDC guidelines. And I was listening to this lecture series that's on podcasts. It's on Apple Podcasts or whatever. It's one of the Yale courses on philosophy, and they were talking about this guy named Adolf Eichmann, who was part of the Nazi regime, and he was known as the executor, not of like necessarily of people, but the executor of their plans. So he
Policy.
wouldn't design policy, he would implement policy, which led to the extermination of lots of Jewish people. And when they had found him and charged him, he was adamant that he was just following orders. And what is creepy about this is that it speaks to this evil that people have in them. Every single person has evil in them that they are they may not be cognizant of, meaning that you could do horrific things because you're following orders. Like this wasn't a cognizant choice. He actually had stories where he was helping Jewish people. Like he didn't hate Jewish people. He was just following orders.
This is such a like great example of just kind of this paradox that we
Right.
have where like on one side we're social creatures
Mhm.
and like social guidelines, social like connections, things like that trump so many individual things that we hold really dearly, right?
Mhm.
So like in that situation you're kind of bound by this like, well, I'm part of this organization,
Yeah.
I'm supposed to follow orders, but then at the same time you have your own personal like morality.
Yes.
And this is the point where I think we are seeing people today stand up for some of their personal moralities. And what you're seeing in the news is a lot of like their morality is like, no, these are my personal rights.
Right.
Wearing a mask is infringing on that.
Right.
And you're all just letting this happen.
Yes. Yes. So that's the scary part where this guy, Adolf Eichmann, is like, if you were in his position, would you be the person who could reflect enough and be like, this is freaking wrong? I can't do this on behalf of this organization that I'm a part of. But he was so concerned with improving and getting ahead in the organization. And what he did was not illegal for the state he was in, right? In the Nazi regime, what he was doing was legal. However, over time, when he did get caught, he was tried for war crimes.
World Court Tribunal.
In the instance, what he was doing was not illegal. It was disgusting. However, he justified it because he was just following orders. So this brings me back to this discussion today. Now, that's an extreme example. That involves literally annihilating people.
Let me add one thing to that.
Okay.
That's where I think you have, and I think this is actually a really strong thing that people need.
Mhm.
If you have a strong moral compass, you have to recognize your own mortality and go, you know what? I'm willing to die to not do this.
Mm-hmm.
Like this act that I'm being asked to do, I'm going to object to this. I'm not going to do it. And I'm willing to die so that I don't just murder.
A
Okay.
strong moral compass doesn't necessarily mean
I'm
that
gonna
it's
challenge
correct, though.
Exactly. So I want to challenge that a little bit.
Well,
And
but in this situation that you're talking about, it's a no-brainer. The guy shouldn't have done it. None of them should have done it.
absolutely.
But his strong moral compass pointed him towards not disobeying his administration.
Bingo. Loyalty, fealty to
This is where
your
this is
Reich
where-
or whatever.
Yeah, this is where I believe there's personal.
Sarah Sanders. Sarah Sanders. Sorry, something's in my throat. Strong loyalty to Trump? What? Who said that?
Yeah, there's there's personal, objective, things that we all agree on that we don't like.
Okay.
Like if we're sitting here,
I'm going to challenge
I
you,
can't-
Hollis.
I
I'm going to
can't-
challenge you on
yeah,
this
yeah,
one
I
because
can't just stab you in the heart out of the blue. We all agree that's a bad thing to do. I
Yeah.
don't need an organization to tell me that's
No,
bad.
this is the only way you kill an incubus. You have to stab it in its heart.
I need garlic. We have garlic.
I
Those
love garlic.
vampires, I don't know.
So what I'm trying to get at is that the rules change over time. And the rules for Adolf Eichmann changed. And he was on the side of wrong because his team lost. So hold on.
I will walk this road with you. But
So-
you're treading on dangerous territory, my friend.
Probably in his interest of self-preservation, he played that card that he was following
Absolutely.
rules, didn't
Yeah.
want to die.
Now you can
Now-
find other extreme examples.
Yeah.
You can find other examples of this.
Slavery.
Here's my point. Exactly, right? Thomas Jefferson owned slaves.
I'm not. Yeah, I don't feel that's right, and I don't feel it's
Right.
right because he was there in history. It's
And-
do you have the
Yeah.
ability to recognize it in the moment, know that it's really bad what you're doing?
Did he have qualms about owning slaves? Maybe.
But is it
He may have written about 'em. I have
Maybe
no
I
clue.
can't comprehend the thought process that would put someone there to make them think that's okay. But if I think I'm, taking away all of somebody's rights for my benefit exclusively, my personal moral compass goes, that's just not a right thing to do.
Okay, well, getting away from the moral compass thing, because I want to hit this timeline thing, right? At one
Yeah.
point, something was correct. Greeks, it was okay in the Greek times to have sex with children.
And in certain circles, right?
We in this society think that is horrendous because there is a thing that we understand called consent, and that is horribly damaging to a
And
child.
innocence.
And all sorts of
Mhm.
stuff. Like a kid is just not even developed yet until you're 25 years old. I wasn't even an adult, and like you said, I wasn't an adult till 27. You said that, and I think that's a profound point. So there are things that in one time were correct. So this brings me back to COVID, okay, and people fighting each other, hurting each other, attacking each other over things that they believe are correct today. So when I'm thinking about who were you during COVID, my challenge to you all and my question is, do you have the humility to recognize that how you're positioning yourself today may be wrong tomorrow? And how right do you really believe you are?
It's a good question for the public. You know the answers from us.
Well, and also I look at we're taking the advice of medical professionals. So back in the day, bloodletting was a way to deal with being sick.
Mm-hmm.
You're hey, let's just drain all the bad stuff out.
Yeah, we're taking the advice from medical professionals, but we're also taking the advice, picking and choosing what we like and what we want to follow.
Right.
True.
I mean, that's just the simple basics of it right now.
As I just feel like as a society, this is such an important thing that as we continue to diversify our demographics here in the United States, we're going to have to develop some sort of moral foundation as the United States. Right now, we are fragmenting.
Oh my goodness! I'm just imagining the peanut gallery in the back. Bring God back to schools. Bring the church back to the government.
Right, which is very difficult. And it's like, dude, that you're literally taking separate moral foundations that fundamentally differ. So how do you create commonality in a very diverse population that has also learned how to exercise its rights? Because at one point, it was very difficult for you to even comprehend how you could go against the state.
Yeah, I mean, there was the ask not what you can do for yourself, but what you can do for your country, right? Like, that was a mentality where we need to come together to deal with things as a group, just like you brought up 9/11. It's a great example.
Yeah, Bush did a good job of bringing that back to the table from JFK.
And even though
we rallied together.
And the outcome of that in 9/11 is that we still went in the wrong direction. However, we were at least all rowing in the same direction.
And I mean, if you look at it just from a leadership role, again, I go back to, you got Fauci standing there and Trump standing there, the two people standing there that we're supposed to listen to, and they're saying
polar opposites.
Yeah. How are you going to unify a country when your CEO and your COO are saying opposite things?
Well, I think the solution is stop putting incompetent leaders in office, and we need to put some true leaders there, some people that have some education, some people that have the ability to band bind, pull the masses together.
Maybe 2024?
Yeah, 2024. 2024. I saw a funny meme the other day. It was, I would rather vote for potato than Biden. And I commented, I said, I'd rather vote for potato than Trump. And that was not a good conversation. But yeah, it's amazing that the Republicans and the Democrats continue to pick the worst possible candidates to lead the country.
I wouldn't say it's the worst possible. I mean,
there's
some
people
the
worst possible
in your neighborhood in OB that I could think would be even worse.
The Libertarians had a guy, they call it, what was his name? Wizard something. He was on the ballot for Libertarians here in California.
Dude, Libertarian, and the problem with
that guy over.
The problem with that whole party is
he wore a boot on his head.
I don't know who he is.
You fundamentally have an issue of just not having enough empathy. That's the big problem with libertarianism.
Yeah. There's a lot of problems, I think, with any party. Libertarians, they want to put a blanket lack of a policy across a mass population where you kind of need a policy for some things.
Yeah. Like, I think you mentioned one time, it was like, well, if your neighbor is creating a bunch of smoke because they're burning their trash in their backyard,
it infringes on your health, and that shouldn't be allowed. But a libertarian would say, well, it's his yard. Right, exactly. So, and that's a huge problem. What if you have a soda tax, or you're not allowing a soda tax because it should be up to the consumer, yet those products are significantly correlated with large amounts of diabetes, obesity that are causing massive healthcare issues, and currently are a huge threat they are threatened by COVID. Like, very high risk if you have diabetes, heart issues, obesity, and COVID, right? That's a huge risk, and it's correlated with poor diet, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Some of the policies and some of the education that's coming out definitely is not in, I think, society's best interest. The ability to put healthier food in schools, for example. We have that ability to. Obama, I believe, did. It was like the Kids Cares Act or something like that, where they wanted to put more nutritious food in the.
Michelle Obama was all about that.
For sure.
She was gunning for it. Because
even gardening. She had a garden at the White House.
Does it just like boggle our minds though? Like, so something like that, like, can we put more nutritious food in schools? Like, what's the dollar figure for doing that, right? And I bet you when that was coming out, they're like, how are we going to pay for this? How will we afford it? And then COVID hits, it's like, here's $3 trillion, $1 million.
Let's print some money.
You just made all that shit up. Like, why are we buying into this?
That's concerning. Economic is very concerning.
You know what? One of the saddest examples of poor resource allocation that I saw was Vegas came out with this place for homeless people to go to during COVID, and all the businesses shut down. They're painting basically like boxes in parking lots for COVID or for people to stay in when they have hotels that are empty. It's like, holy fuck.
Well, those hotel people don't want those people coming in. That's
I get it.
You have greedy people who are like, I don't want to be a public service.
Come on.
Yeah, like that example really does make me think of like, as a society, if we could invent all this money to deal with one thing, why can't we use some of that to deal with resources?
Lobbyist interests.
Yeah, and
sustainability.
This like comes back to this like this like ethical moral divide, right? Like Sinan, like what you're really bringing up here with this thing is like you keep saying like who are you doing during COVID, but what you're hitting on is where is your ability and where is your interest to take an ethical moral stance in a situation.
With enough humility to recognize that you might be wrong tomorrow.
Sure, you might be wrong tomorrow, right? But the point that I'm getting at is that here we are, healthy food in schools, making colleges cheaper, all these things that would be really great for society. And when are we as individuals taking stances to help make that real? Or are we just sitting by the sidelines? So like in the COVID example, it's like, should we wear masks or not or whatever? But in the broader picture of society, what are we actually standing up for these days? And I think something that this should be coloring up for everybody is like, we all kind of took a close look at our mortality and said like, well, where are we going with this thing?
It's true.
And so as a group of people, what are we okay with?
Well, I think that's a big question in terms of that BLM movement. That's a big question right now is, are you taking a stand? Because no matter what, you're forced to now. So where are you standing? And that's a conversation for another time. The whole, we've been talking about who were you during COVID, and we've strictly focused on the disease. We haven't touched on the George Floyd and what that kickstarted. And I think that when we're looking at who were you during COVID, I just hope that what can happen from this is that people can forgive others for being quote unquote wrong, right? I believe I'm right, therefore you're wrong. Can I be forgiving of you that tomorrow we may switch places so that you give me that same forgiveness if I chose not to wear a mask that one time and it turned out that I contaminated 35 people for being a mouth breather.
I think, fortunately, I'm not faced with that moral dilemma, but I'm curious, what are some of the things that we can do right now that supports the decisions or at least the stance that we're on? What are the things that we can be proactive with and then learn those lessons? Hindsight's 2020. Was I correct or was I not? I mean, right now wearing a mask seems like a victimless thing to do, to wear a mask, and only benefits can be achieved.
Yeah.
Now, there's a right way of doing things and a wrong way. There's a right way of delivery and there's a wrong way. Telling somebody they're an idiot and macing them in the face while they're eating barbecue at a park is clearly a very wrong way of delivery.
Chill, bro.
Or going to a store without a mask and then getting belligerent when someone says, we're not willing to serve you.
So in my own ability, my power that I have, I can't control a lot of things. There's a very small scope of influence that I have. The influence that I do have is going to be being neighborly. The influences that are in my niche. That's all I have to say about it. You know, it's a struggle that I think business owners are faced with. One of the things that I see often in my neighborhood is restaurants are putting people at the cusp of a sidewalk where foot traffic is coming through. And is this moral to expose people on the street with a numerous amount of individuals that aren't, practicing any coverings, any face coverings, or any hygiene, actually, for that matter, some of these people. But that business needs to stay open. So when they look back and they maybe have a COVID outbreak and it's pointing their finger at them, and then they have the CDC or the local municipality coming in and shutting down that business, how's that business going to reflect? Are they going to say, shit, I put people out on the street and expose them? This is the reason why. Maybe I'm at fault because I made that decision to put my patrons at this location. Or are they going to fall back similarly to Adolf Eichmann and say, well, I was following the guidelines of what the government was telling me and I'm stuck in this box. It's not my fault.
Yeah.
So this is a good perspective to look
It's
at.
reflection.
Um,
To be reflective and what you hit something very important, which is I can only control myself.
I can only
And
control myself.
that is something that I think is huge, is to
Yeah.
recognize, to manage yourself before managing other people.
right. That woman who maced those people at the
She
park,
was trying to manage someone else.
she had no business doing that. She could
No
have
business.
walked away and protected herself from COVID,
Mm-hmm.
from a puppy biting her, from barbecue sauce spilling on her dress, and from a policeman showing up at her door, slapping her with some assault charges.
Yeah.
And just to be counter here, though, like, you know, there's that great quote that's like, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. Right. So in your Eichmann example, if Eichmann was a good person, he should have done something, or people who saw what they were doing should have done something.
And that's the predicament
You know.
that lady probably felt too.
She felt like she was
felt
on the
like
right
she was,
side of
yeah,
that thing.
she's
and
righteous.
Like, you guys aren't doing the right
That's
thing. And
what I'm
already,
like.
you know.
I just feel like people believe they're doing the right thing today. And so I'll give you one more example, because I think we're kind of wrapping up here, is when COVID first happened and we were all locked down, there was this protests of people screaming, you're infringing on our civil liberties. They protest. They were getting excoriated in the media. Michigan was a big one that I saw.
Lansing,
I watched.
militia.
Yep. And at the time, I was like, look at these fucking idiots. Like, that was my first thought, and I completely judged them. And then now we're how many months in on lockdown? And I'm thinking, dude, they were totally justified in their perspective of like, this is not okay.
Yeah.
And I didn't give them the principle of charity. Have you heard of this? The principle of charity? So the principle of charity is that you take someone's argument with the maximum possibility that they are coming from a rational place and then work the other way. So you don't work with you're an idiot to start. You work with you're a
right.
rational person.
Yeah.
Let's walk this back.
That's literally how I operate, like 100% of the time. It's a weird thing.
I don't operate that.
I don't.
No.
It's kind of a problem.
Oh, absolutely, because you're gonna get sucked into stuff that you shouldn't be sucked into.
Well,
but
no, I like start with where are they coming from, and I try to puzzle it out and work back.
I think
from
that's
there.
important. I think it's important for us as a country to start doing things
But
like that.
But those
We
clashes,
need to start figuring out what our moral compass is as a nation and what can we agree on with all these diverse interests.
those clashes.
We're not going to agree on having God in our schools. We're just not.
Yeah, those clashes are healthy though. Like that's the point, right? Like so they feel strongly one way, other people feel strongly the other. They clash. You kind of work it out. Like you figure it out, right? Like if one starts trying to silence another's voice, that's where you're really off the rails, and that's where America really falls apart. Like we were built on this foundation of like free speech, and that's okay. And I think people have kind of taken that to this extreme these days where we're so sensitive about everything that a disagreement in any way is seen as like this offense. And it's like, we just have different ideas on this one thing. We're both still Americans. We're both still citizens. If you really look at how we live our lives, we live within thousands of rules piled on top of other rules that we all agree on.
Yeah.
We agree.
And we actually may not even know
and then
them.
There's this one
Don't
one
hunt
rule
whales in
over here.
Ohio. This is a law.
Yeah, then there's one rule over here we just
A lot of
freak out.
fraternity people are going to be pissed off about that rule.
Like, I mean, there's so much commonality in how we live our daily lives that it's crazy that we freak out over these little one-off things that we just treat them as if they're everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know what we're gonna do about it. We're gonna have to figure out a way. How do we develop a unified moral compass in this country that seeks to get to the fundamental tenets of what we want as a people?
Work is a good distraction. Like maybe we could build a base on Mars. Be like, we're all gonna build a base on Mars.
You're kind of right. I mean,
You know, like we need a
triumphant
common job,
achievements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like binding together and these huge successes to rally a winning flag.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are things that do pull people together. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think one of the challenges is the like things that we could do on that scope today are just outside of so much of our capability. Like okay, we want to beat China at AI.
Mhm.
Like, how is the average citizen going to help in that? Like that's there's nothing
No.
I can add to that to like
No, the
help
average
us there.
citizen could help if we brought manufacturing jobs back into the country. That would
Yeah.
be pretty tough, but then you have economic issues
And we
that
build
make that
another
difficult, right?
Panama Canal or like
Yeah.
dig another dam. Like I can help with that.
I do also want to clarify that, with the advent of 9/11, that we did also have fallout from that as well. So even though we did unify temporarily, which was great to see, there was fallout too. People started getting
Sure.
discriminated against, including myself,
Yeah.
really badly. And we
Sorry
became,
about that, Sanan.
Well, you didn't do that, but
I called you a lot of
I shouldn't have
terrible
drove
things.
down the street throwing bottles at you.
yeah,
That one
right.
day.
And
I
it was
still feel bad about it.
it's just terrible, like, and we have to figure out how can we give people the principle of charity. So who were you during COVID? And who do you want to be?
I was unimpressed during COVID. The numbers didn't add up for me to really change my life much. However, I did take advantage of the downtime and the surplus of time that I had that was given to me from working at home to better my physical health and my mental health and my career. That's who I was.
Yeah, I would hope that a lot of people got an exercise in mental health. However, I'm also very thankful that I don't have people that I have to take care of, like children. I'm feeling for people who have to work from home with multiple kids. Maybe they have an adult that they have to take care of who can't take care
Yeah.
of themselves. Maybe they live with elderly people. So there's people who are not in our situations who are still struggling. We're almost in August.
Absolutely.
Still struggling. I feel for them because they don't have the time.
Think
for
how terrifying that
themselves.
would be. Like, let's say you've got kids. Let's say you didn't have a lot of savings. You lose your job, and that had your health care tied to it. So now you don't have any income, and you don't have health care, and you have
Mhm.
this boogeyman COVID chasing you everywhere you go.
But that's
That'd
not who we are right now.
That's
in
not who
COVID.
we are, but that would be absolutely terrifying to be in that
Mhm.
situation.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for where I'm at in this because it could, if this happened 10 years ago, I would have been in a much worse place.
God, if this happened 10 years ago, I was in a worse place. I was in Afghanistan.
Yeah,
10 years ago,
I was 21,
yeah.
still figuring out my stuff out.
I couldn't have imagined that my life would be this sweet 10 years ago.
Yeah.
My life is like the best thing ever. Like, it's so great.
You can thank Robert for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dog. Yeah. And, all right.
And the wife, of
Forgot
course,
about
the wife.
Always the wife. Yes, of course, the wife.
All right, guys. Good
Cheers.
talk.
Until next time.